Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video we got another season preview video to discuss. We're looking at the Blackhawks and the Predators. We're looking at how they did last year and looking ahead to how they might do this upcoming season, with all that coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to this video here at the Internet Hockey Channel. Before we get into this video, don't forget to like this video and subscribe down below. Thank you for your support. We're now to without you guys, so if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below and don't forget to leave a comment down in the comment section below so we can all discuss today's video. Now once again, like we talked about in our last season preview video, we've got another season preview video here to discuss. We're looking at the Predators and we're looking at the Blackhawks. We're going to look at these two teams. We're going to look at how they did last year, some of their top point producers. We're going to look at how they did in this offseason, additions, losses, including their top 3 picks in the draft. We're also going to look at some of their biggest questions entering training camp. We're going to be looking at my predictions for their team for the upcoming season, as well as my projected lineup for that team. And we're going to be looking at 3 ways they can improve, plus their rating from this past offseason. So we're going to start here with the Chicago Blackhawks. Last year was not an overly great season for them. They finished with a record of 23, 53, and 6, which isn't overly good. Finished 8th in the Central Division, 15th in the Western Conference, and 31st in the league. They put up 179 goals for, which was dead last in the NHL, and they put up 290 goals against, which was 3rd last in the NHL. So not an overly great season there for the Hawks. Didn't do overly well keeping the puck out of their net. Really didn't do well putting the puck in the net, and they were one of the lowest teams in the NHL this past year. Point scoring leaders for his team for this past year were led by Connor Bedard. Even though he missed some time, he finished with 61 points, which was the highest of any player on that Blackhawks team. Kurashev, who had 54 points, was 2nd on the team in scoring, and Nick Foligno, who had 37 points, was 3rd on the team in scoring. So once again, not overly great. You usually see teams have 1 to 2, maybe 80 to 70 point players, maybe even 3 to 4 of them. The Hawks didn't even have one 70 point player and only had 2 players above 40 points. So you can see why they were dead last in scoring. Goal scoring wise, the only 2 players who had over 20 goals was Connor Bedard and Jason Dickinson, both scoring 22 goals, and then Philip Kurashev had 18 goals. So once again, not an overly great amount of players hit the 20 plus goal mark, so interesting note there. And once again, the rookie leader for this team, the most points by rookie this year, was Connor Bedard, 22 goals, 39 assists, and 61 points, led them in goal scoring, led them in point totals, so you can see why he was the leader in the rookie category as well. So interesting stuff there for the Hawks. Looking ahead to what they did this past offseason, if for their additions, they brought back Zach Sanford, Lucas Reichel, Cole Gutman, Isaac Phillips, and Louis Crevier. A couple of those guys are RFAs. There were a couple there that were UFAs too, so interesting stuff there. They also brought in Teuvo Teravainen on a 3-year deal with an AV of $5.4 million. They brought in Tyler Bertuzzi on a 4-year deal with AV just over $5 million, so interesting pieces there. We're going to really help that top 9. They also add Craig Smith on a 1-year deal, Patrick Maroon on a 1-year deal. Those 2 should be really good veteran bomb 6 forwards who I think could be moved at the deadline. They also were able to acquire Alec Martinez on I think a 1-year $4 million deal. TJ Brody on a 1 or 2-year deal, a $3.75 million AV deal. So that's going to strengthen that defensive core. And they bring in Laurent Brossoit on a 2-year deal at just over $3 million. So should really be able to help that Hawks team. So interesting stuff there. If you look at their losses this past year, they lose Tyler Johnson, who's UFA, Colin Blackwell to Dallas via free agency, Rem Pitlick who's a UFA, Jared Tenorti, who's UFA, Nikita Zaitsev, who signed over in the KHL, Jacob Megna, who went over to Florida, Taylor Radish, who went to Washington, Mackenzie Entwistle, who went to Florida, and Reese Johnson, who's now a UFA. So they lost a lot of interesting pieces this past offseason. Not too significant players. I mean, Entwistle, Radish, Tenorti, Zaitsev, the Johnsons, Blackwell, they're all really good players, but they were mostly bomb 6 third pair players. So interesting stuff there. They did make one small trade this offseason. It involved the Vancouver Canucks. They traded their 2027 4th round pick to the Vancouver Canucks in exchange for Ilya Mikheyev, Sam Lafferty signing rights, and a 2027 2nd round pick. They never did sign Lafferty, so he left via free agency, so he never really stayed there. But they did keep Mikheyev, who's going to be a solid middle 6 speedy forward for them, and they were able to move up 2 rounds in the draft and get a 2nd round pick instead of a 4th round pick. So pretty good good trade there for the Hawks to get those things from Vancouver. Their top 3 picks in this past year's draft, one was Artem Levshinov, who was the 2nd overall pick. He signed his DLC, most likely going to start in the AHL, could be an NHL player by the end of the season. They also took Sasha Boisvert, who's 18th overall, pretty good pickup there for the Hawks too. Eventually should be a solid middle 6 forward. And they got Marek Vanacker, who they recently just signed to his DLC. Should be a couple of years before he gets into the NHL, but another first round pick, 27th overall. And he should be eventually a solid top 9 forward too. So a couple of pretty good pickups here for the Hawks, picking in the 2nd, 18th, and 27th spot in the first round. So really good pickups there for the Hawks. The 2 biggest questions, in my opinion, entering the training camp is 1, can Hall stay healthy? He was injured a whole bunch last year, was a really big piece of why that Hawks team finished so low in the goal scoring department. If he can stay healthy up until the trade deadline, when there's a possibility he could get moved, I think that could be a really good help to the Hawks. So that's a big question. And 2 is, who could they move at the deadline? I mean, there's a lot of players here entering the final year of their deals. Like, I think Andreas Anthony was one of them. Hall, we just mentioned. They just signed guys like Martinez, Smith, Maroon, I think Brody as well, to all 1-year deals. There's a couple of other guys who are entering the final year of their deals. So there's a lot of pending UFAs that the Hawks could move at the deadline. And I definitely think there'll probably be a team who's on the outside looking in right now. So I think the 2 biggest questions entering the deadline is 1, can Hall stay healthy? And 2, who is this team going to move at the deadline? So interesting stuff there. If I can make predictions for this team for this upcoming season. So in my opinion, after having a bad season, I do have them doing a little bit better next year. I have them finishing with 76 points. That's a 24-point jump from where they were the year prior. I do think they're going to have a better season. I do think Bedard's going to take another step in the right direction. They're not going to be anywhere close to a playoffs. I had them missing the playoffs by like nearly 20 points. So I don't see them being a playoff team this upcoming season, but I do see them having another major step and some major improvements. I still have them being a bottom 10 team in the NHL, but still, I think that's a pretty good pickup there for the Hawks as they're able to get that far ahead. So interesting stuff there. So my current projected lineup for the Blackhawks for this upcoming season, my top line is Taylor Hall with Tyler Bertuzzi and Connor Bedard. My second line is Philip Kurashev with Frank Nazar and Teuvo Teravainen. My third line is Reichel with Jason Dickinson and Andreas Anthony. And the fourth line is Mikheyev with Foligno and Maroon. So I think that's a pretty good forward group there for the Blackhawks. The defensively, I have Korchinski playing with Seth Jones, Alex Vlasic playing with Connor Murphy, and Louis Crevier playing with TJ Brody. I have Mrazek playing with Bourgeois and Nets, and I have my spares being Ryan Donato, Craig Smith, and Alec Martinez. So that's my current projected lineup for the Blackhawks for this upcoming offseason. It would be a really good cap compliant roster, so that's my opinion on what I think the Hawks lineup will look like at the start of the season. On top of that, I feel like 3 ways this Hawks team can improve to build off of last year. 1, I think the young guys need to take more steps. They're going to have some more rookies probably make the team this year, so I think they need to take some really big steps. Can Bedard have more points than last year? Can he top 61 points? Can Vlasic take a step? Can Korchinski take a step? Can Kurashev take another big step? Can some of these other younger guys take big steps? I think if they were to, the Hawks will have a much better season this upcoming season. They need more offense. They add some more with guys like Bertuzzi, Teravainen, Mikheyev. They've added some really good offensive weapons, and if Hall can stay healthy, and they, like I said, these young guys can take a step forward, this team should be a little bit more offensive than they were last year. So that's, in my opinion, something that they need to do if they want to be a little bit better this year. They need to be more offensive. And lastly, they need growth on the blue line. They were not an overly great defensive team last year. If they're able to grow a little bit on the blue line, with Korchinski now having a season under his belt, Vlasic having a couple full seasons, I think they could be a little bit more better as well. So in my opinion, if they can grow on the blue line, get a little bit more offensive, and have the young guys take some more bigger steps, this team should be a lot better than it was last year. So that's my opinion on the Blackhawks. Just grading their offseason, I'm going to give them an A-. They had a fantastic offseason. Didn't lose too many big things. Added huge guys like Bourgeois and Nets, like Martinez and Brody on the defensive end, Teravainen, Bertuzzi, Mikheyev up front. This should be a really good team this upcoming season. I do feel like this team really took some major steps forward this offseason, so I feel like an A- is warranted there. So that's my opinion on the Blackhawks. Let you guys thoughts on that. Let's go over to the Nashville Predators. Now for the Predators, this season wasn't an overly bad season. It started out quite shaky for them. They were up and down, but they had a really good stretch at the second half of the season that led them to a 47-30-5 record for 99 points, 4th in the Central Division, 6th in the Western Conference, and 11th in the NHL. So it was a pretty good record there for the Predators, nearly hitting the triple-digit mark. They had 269 goals for, which was 10th in the NHL, so they're a really good goal-scoring team. Well, they had 248 goals against, which was 13th in the NHL, which is still above average. So pretty good stuff there for the Predators. The top 3 point getters this year for the Predators were 1, Forsberg, who had 94 points. Yossi, who had 85 points as a defenseman, and Gustav Nyquist, who had a fantastic season, putting up 75 points. So interesting stuff there. If you look at the team's goal scorers, their top 3 goal scorers for this past season was Forsberg, who had 48 goals, Ryan O'Reilly, who had 26 goals, and then Roman Josi and Gustav Nyquist, who both had 23 goals. Interesting stuff there. Their rookie goal-scoring leader was Luca Evangelista, who put up 16 goals and 23 points in 39 games. Looked pretty good. So interesting stuff there. And if you look at their playoffs, because they didn't make the playoffs, they lost in round 1 to the Vancouver Canucks in 6 games. Their point leaders in that series was Forsberg, who had 6 points in that first-round series, and Gustav Nyquist, who had 4 points in that first-round series. And then Forsberg scored twice in that series, and then there were a whole bunch of players who scored once in that series. So interesting stuff there to see their leaders from the past little while. Now, if we go over to their additions and losses for this past offseason, if you look at their additions, they were able to bring back Alex Carrier, Spencer Stastny, Mark DeGazio, so they did bring back some interesting players, but if you look at their additions, there was a lot of them. Added Scott Wedgwood to be a new backup, Jonathan Marchessault to help in the top 6, Brady Skjei to help on the defensive end, Steven Stamkos to help on the forward group, Kiefer Bellows and Vinny Hinostroza as depth forwards, Nick Blankenberg is a solid third pair, potentially depth defenseman, and Matt Murray, who should be a solid third string goaltender there for that team. So they have a lot of really good additions this past offseason. If you look at their losses, not a whole bunch here. They lose Jason Zucker to Buffalo, Wade Allison, who's UFA, Jared Anderson-Dolan, who's in Winnipeg, Liam Foudy, who's a New York I, Anthony Beauvillier, who went to Pittsburgh, Kiefer Sherwood, who left for Vancouver, Tyson Barrie, and Kevin Lankinen, who are both UFAs right now. So interesting stuff there. They made 3 trades involving players this past offseason. They traded Kiskinen and a 2024 second-round pick, which was 53rd overall, to Detroit in exchange for prospect Andrew Gibson, who eventually could be a solid third, second-pair right-shot defenseman. They traded Igor Afanaseyev to the San Jose Sharks in exchange for Ozzy Weisblatt, who I think eventually could be a solid third-line forward. And they traded Ryan McDonough and a 2024 fourth-rounder, which was 128th overall, back to Tampa in exchange for a 2025 second and a 2024 seventh, number 213 overall. So interesting stuff there. So they are able to acquire a couple of picks, Andrew Gibson and Ozzy Weisblatt, and move on from Afanaseyev, Kiskinen, McDonough, and a couple of picks. So interesting stuff there. Made some interesting moves, but I do think those moves were pretty good. I'm not sure if they really lost any of them. A second for McDonough is pretty good. Getting Weisblatt for Afanaseyev is pretty good, and getting Gibson, even though they had to give up a second round pick, is pretty good. So interesting stuff there. Their top 3 picks from this past draft, first was their first round pick, 22nd overall, was Igor Surin, so a pretty good pickup there for them. A little bit off the board, but I think it could be a really good pickup there. You also have them taking Teddy Stiga, who was a second round pick, 55th overall, who should be eventually a solid player there for the Preds. And you have Gustafsson, who was a third round pick, 77th overall from the Preds, who I think should be a really good pickup there for Nashville. So interesting stuff there. If we look at the 2 biggest questions this team is facing entering training camp is, 1, can they have more than a 20-man roster? As it sits right now, their cap situation has them only having a 20-man roster being cap compliant. So there's a very likely chance that they may have to either run with a 20-man roster or make a cost-cutting move. So interesting stuff there, but I think the biggest question is, will they have to make a cost-cutting move, or will they run with a 20-man roster to start the season? It'll be interesting to see. And lastly, what happens with Askarov? Askarov is a solid young prospect goaltender. He's a really good player there for the Predators, so I'm not sure if they do still move on from him, and I don't think they'll move on from him at this point, but it's going to be an interesting situation to watch out for during training camp and during the start of the season to see, is Askarov going to start in the minors for the Predators, or will he be dealt to another team? So interesting stuff there. It'll be interesting to see exactly what happens with Askarov, but I think the 2 biggest questions entering training camp are, can the Preds have more than a 20-man roster, or will they have to make some sort of a move, and what happens with Askarov? I think those are the 2 biggest things. Going over to my predictions for them for this upcoming season, I have them taking a major step forward. We saw them take a really good step forward this past year, making the playoffs, being a first wildcard team. With the additions they made this past year, I have them being second in the Central Division with 108 points, plus 9 from last year. I really do think that the Predators are going to be a much better team this year. I don't think they have just enough what it takes to be a team who finishes first in the Central, but I do think they're going to be a top 2 team in this year's Central Division. So interesting stuff there, but I do have the Preds taking a major step forward. So interesting stuff there. So in my current lineup, I have Philip Forsberg playing on the top line with Steven Stamkos and Gustav Nyquist. I have Jonathan Marchessault playing with Ryan O'Reilly and Luca Evangelista. I have Joakim Kemell playing with Thomas Novak and Cole Decisions, and I have Cole Smith playing with Cody Glass and Philip Tomasino. That's my forward group for the Predators right now. On the defensive side, I have Yossi playing with Fabro, Carey playing with Skjei, and Shem playing with Lazan, with Saros and Wedgwood as the two goaltenders. So, in my opinion, those are some pretty good additions there for the Preds. I don't have them having any spares because of their tight cap situation, so interesting to note there, but some interesting stuff there for Predators at this point in time. If you look at the series, you can see this team improve off of last year. One would have to be more offense from the bottom six. They were a one-line team last year really much with Forsberg, Nyquist, and O'Reilly. If they can get some more bottom six goal scoring, they should be a much better team this upcoming season. I think if they can give Saros some more rest, that could be another one. Over the past couple of years, Saros has been a 60 to 65 game starter for the Predators. If they can give him a little bit more rest, have him play like maybe 55 to 60 games and have Wedgwood play a little bit more, I think that could be a really good advantage there for the Predators. So interesting stuff there. And once again, young players need to take steps. I think younger guys like Tomasino, like Kamel, like Evangelista, like Glass need to take another step forward this offseason if the Predators want to try and improve a little bit more. So in my opinion, 3 ways I can see this team improving will be to get some more offense from the bottom six, give Saros some more rest, and have some young players take some more steps. And in my opinion, I'm giving this team an A for their offseason rating. Had a pretty good offseason in my opinion, adding Stamkos, adding Marchessault, adding Skjei. They also added a couple of interesting pieces. One thing I did forget to mention was that they extended Saros, so he's going to be there for the next 9 seasons. So they have a lot of interesting moves this past offseason, and I think it's going to really help this team improve and take some more steps forward this upcoming season. So interesting stuff there. But that's what I want to talk about the Hawks and the Predators. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on all this down in the comment section below. What do you think about them? How do you think they did last year? Do you think that they can improve this upcoming season? What do you think about each team's additions and losses in the free agency? Plus, what do you think about their trades and their top 3 picks in this past year's draft? Do you agree with me about how these teams can improve or their biggest questions going into the training camp? Do you agree with my predictions for these 2 teams or my projected lineups? And what do you think about these 2 teams? Do they warrant an A and A- rating, or do you think I'd put them a little bit too high? Definitely let me know your thoughts on all that down in the comment section below. So I'm going to talk about for today. Or inside this video, if you like to subscribe down below. Thank you all for supporting me to all of you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below. Don't forget to leave a comment down in the comment section below. So it's going to discuss today's video. Also a blog talking about news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that. So if you check that out, leave a link down in the description below. And can't wait to see you guys all for next video. See you guys soon.